I don't know how it is for you, but for me, it's really tough if I see somebody not expressing their true potential. And here's a statistic that bothers me. By the time they reach high school, the top 5%, the most intellectually gifted students we have, half of them are underachieving by the time they hit high school. And as if that isn't bad enough, 48% of those underachieving, very smart kids don't go ahead and graduate from college either. And if you follow them later, the myth of the late bloomer it's not borne out. In fact, what happens is underachievers at that very high level, when they get out and they're pursuing a career, by the time they're 35, they are as much as 13 years behind their peers in their career development. And it's because they bounce from one thing to another. I ran into this problem of underachievement. It didn't always obsess me like it does now, but I got a call from a mother, and she was anguished, and I could hear it in her voice. And she made an appointment for her family to come in. And her family consisted of her and her husband and their dear child, their 15-year-old child, making straight D's in his sophomore year in high school with an IQ of 150. And it was something about their agony at seeing this that really got to me. I'd worked with kids whose grades were poor before, and it didn't leave the kind of impression this did on me. And I listened to the parents talk, and what I heard them say repeatedly in the first 15 minutes was, "Please, son, why don't you just try?" And then they'd turn to me and say, "We don't understand." We ask him why he isn't doing better, and then we tell him, "Just try, just try." So I thought I heard something that was key. I asked the son to leave. I'd talked to him a little bit about whether he was willing to do well in school, and he said maybe. And so I talked to the parents and I said, "Listen, I don't know whether you understand this or not, but here's what's going on. You are telling your child not to succeed." And they looked at me, and I continued. I said, "When you say just try, you're actually saying don't succeed. You're saying just try." And kids are very literal, and they listen to what you say. And when they start testing limits, the way you respond to them tells them whether you're saying they have to or they don't have to. He felt he didn't have to do well in school. I said, "You've got to do something. You've got to step up to your parental role, and you've got to take a risk. You can't be afraid to fail, and you can't be afraid that you're going to antagonize him, and it's going to ruin your relationship with him. Go home and tell him, 'Look, we're sorry. We haven't made ourselves clear enough. You have to do well in school.'" So the family leaves, and I don't hear from them again for 6 years. In the meantime, though, like my hair's on fire. I can't stand it that this is going on with that one family, and I realize all around me I've been seeing kids like this, and I just haven't been tuned in quite the same way I was now. I looked into the literature on underachievement, and it was pretty grim. There had been never, in the last 60 years, anything that worked with underachievement. Lots of studies had been done. They gave kids study skills. They did all kinds of things. Well, I decided we had to go a different route. And so what I did, paying attention to the way parents were talking to their kids repeatedly, is I took the kids and I put them in a group for 14 weeks, and I talked to them not about school at all. We didn't mention school unless they brought it up. Instead, what I talked about was their aspirations and what they'd want to do if they really could. If they could run their own life, what would they want to do? What was their passion? What was the thing that if they did it, it would be worth failing for? And I started telling the same thing to the parents, but in an entirely different environment. I told them they had to learn how to give clear directives to their kids and insist that the kids do well. I said, that's what they're asking for. And you know what? There's 50 years of research that shows unequivocally that what kids really thrive in, what makes them achieve, is when there are high demands, high expectations, firm guidance, really clear boundaries and lots of affection, lots of warmth and lots of engagement and a willingness to listen. And this kind of devotion to saying, but this is the way it has to be. Parents had a hard time with this at first, especially the ones that had started resorting to various kinds of bribes. They didn't talk about it that way. They talked about it as incentives, wanting their children to have success experiences. They started bargaining with the teachers to give kids A's when they really didn't do anything better than a C. All kinds of things, strategies that parents resorted to that actually undercut their kids learning basic ethics, much less how to achieve. So I started saying to these parents, look, you've got to know that the research says that you've got to be somebody when you're a parent. If you have a child and you care about that child, show your caring by being firm. Show your caring by being a leader to that child. Now, there's no big deal about this research. If you think yourself to the teacher or the coach or the person in your life that meant the most to you, who really said something to you that stuck with you, often when I ask people about that, they'll raise their hand when I say, was it somebody who in fact gave you a pretty hard time, who demanded a lot, but you knew cared about you? And always in audiences, they'll say, it was somebody who was tough but was fair, and I knew they liked me. You've got to take a risk if you're a parent. You've got to take this fundamental risk because you're underachieving as a parent if you won't step up to your child and say, look, I love you. I will never, ever grow tired of parenting you. I will give you everything I have because you're too good to fail, and I'm not going to let you fail. I'm not going to let you. I demand that you do well, and you do well in a strong, solid way that's going to make you feel better. And you may not like this at first because it's a shock, like having to do things, but you've got to do it. And I already know that school is boring for you maybe, but while we all wait for the revolution in the paradigm in education, we can't stand by consoling our children and coddling them and saying, it's okay, I understand, dear, I know you don't want to do it. We've got to step up and say, look, some things are hard in life. You know what happens when things are hard? You learn how to be tougher. You learn how to be resourceful. You learn how to overcome. And that's the message our children need from us. And when we give it to them, they respond. Guess what? Those kids, when there was research that showed nothing could improve them, in 14 weeks, these kids went up 0.6 of a grade point. That's the difference between a 3.2 and a 3.8. But you know what? I wasn't satisfied with that. 6 months later, I wanted to know what they were doing then. By then, you expect a regression back because we weren't coaching them. We didn't have any more contact with them. By then, it was 0.8 of a grade point. They had learned something that infected them and took them over, and their families too. And everybody said, you know what? I'm getting along with my kid better. I give you this charge. Go in, be brave, be strong with your children. They love it. It makes them feel strong. Even when they say, get out of my life, they love it when you give them structure. Go for it. Thank you.